Indiana Fever fans were left holding their breath after Sophie Cunningham collapsed with a scary knee injury against the Connecticut Sun. With Caitlin Clark already sidelined, it felt like the Fever's playoff hopes were about to go up in flames. But then, the internet exploded. A leaked locker room photo showed Sophie not only standing, but smiling. That one frame has completely flipped the conversation. Is her injury not as bad as feared, or is this just false hope? Tonight we break down the shocking detail, the outrage, and what it really means for the Fever. When Sophie Cunningham went down in the second quarter of Sunday's game, you could hear a pin drop in the arena. She collided awkwardly with Bria Hartley under the basket, immediately grabbed her right knee and let out a cry that silenced the crowd. She throws the pass and she immediately falls down on Sophie Cunningham's leg. So, let's slow this down right here and let's basically watch this frame by frame. Let's watch this frame by frame. So, Bria Hartley is throwing a pass right here. Kelsey Mitchell helps in. Sophie Cunningham, in fairness, is not fully helped over. Sophie Cunningham should be a step or two out in this scenario. And Bria Hartley goes and rises. Sophie Cunningham should be a little bit more over. She throws the pass. She is off balance by the looks of things here. Trainers rushed in. Teammates surrounded her. And Fever fans feared the worst. This wasn't just another knock. Sophie's reaction said it all. The pain was real, and the fear was written on her face. She was helped off the court, unable to put weight on her leg, and quickly ruled out for the rest of the game. For Indiana, this was a nightmare scenario. Let's remember, the Fever have already lost Erie McDonald and Sydney Colson for the season, and Caitlin Clark has missed nearly 20 games. Sophie was the steadying force keeping Indiana alive in the playoff race. Losing her felt like the final blow. Even in a game where Kelsey Mitchell delivered a jaw-dropping 38 points, the celebration was muted. The storyline wasn't about the win, it was about the collapse. Fever fans went to bed fearing they had just witnessed the moment their season died. But here's where this story takes its wild turn. Hours after the game, a still photo from inside the Fever locker room surfaced online. During Stephanie White's fiery post-game speech, eagle-eyed fans spotted Sophie Cunningham in the background. Not only was she standing, she was smiling. The clip went viral instantly. Fans on X, formerly Twitter, zoomed in, screenshot it, circled her grin, and spread it like wildfire. One fan wrote, "Best part of the locker room talk, a smiling Sophie standing up. Hope it's not season ending." Another posted, "This changes everything. That doesn't look like someone with a torn ACL." For a fan base desperate for hope, that smile became the sign they were clinging to. Suddenly what looked like a devastating season-ending injury might actually be survivable. Was she masking pain? Was it adrenaline? Or was this proof that her injury wasn't as severe as everyone feared? Social media lit up with positivity. Fans poured in prayers, optimism, and cautious relief. The narrative shifted overnight from doom and gloom to cautious hope. And all of it came from one single frame. Fortunately, as of this second, we don't have an official update on Sophie Cunningham's injury. But what we do have is we've got one quote-unquote injury expert out there that did weigh in based on the camera angles of Sophie Cunningham's injury. We've also got a very interesting picture that has emerged with Bria Hartley smiling and laughing over this incident of Sophie Cunningham being hurt. Here's where the Fever community split right down the middle. And honestly, this might be the most heated fan debate of the season. That viral smile in the locker room gave people something to cling to, but it also ignited a war of words online. On one side, you had fans saying, "See, she's standing, she's fine. This is proof she's not dealing with something season-ending like an ACL." Some even pointed to the fact that Sophie wasn't on crutches or in a brace during that post-game shot. To them, this wasn't just a smile, it was evidence. One fan even tweeted, "I tore my ACL and couldn't stand like that after. This looks like a minor sprain at worst. That kind of optimism spread like wildfire, but then came the skeptics. And let me tell you, they came in hard. Their message was simple. A smile doesn't heal ligaments. They reminded everyone that plenty of athletes have walked off the court with torn ACLs, including Klay Thompson in the NBA and Elena Del Don in the WNBA. They pointed out that adrenaline and pride can mask pain, and Sophie could have been smiling for her teammates while hiding serious damage. One post summed it up. She's tough, but don't confuse toughness with health. We won't know until the scans come back. This tug-of-war created a new layer of tension, because beyond the injury itself, it showed how desperate Fever fans are right now. They've lived through a season where every time they take a step forward, another injury drags them 2 steps back. Caitlin Clark's groin injury. Ari McDonald and Sydney Colson ruled out, and now Sophie, the emotional anchor. The smile became a symbol of hope, but also of denial. Even sports media jumped in. Analysts debated on air whether fans were reading too much into it. Some claimed the Fever were intentionally releasing positive imagery to keep morale high, while others suggested Sophie herself was pushing to show strength. And that's what made the smile so controversial. It blurred the line between optimism and reality. Was this a hint that the Fever dodged a bullet? Or was it just a brave face from a player who knows her team can't afford to collapse emotionally? Until the official medical report drops, nobody knows the truth. But one thing is clear. That one smile shifted the conversation from despair to debate. And in the middle of a heated playoff race, that's enough to keep Indiana fans both hopeful and on edge. Now, it's interesting this injury expert speculates, doesn't think it's an ACL, maybe an MCL, or the thing that I considered when I saw it. I thought her knee dislocated, is what I thought I saw. Okay. Now let's get brutally real here, and because if Sophie Cunningham's injury turns out to be serious, it could derail Indiana's playoff hopes completely. Let's rewind for a second. The Fever are sitting in a dogfight for one of the final playoff spots. They're hovering around .500, fighting tooth and nail to outpace teams like the Sparks and the Sky. Every single game matters. Without Caitlin Clark, Sophie had stepped into the role of both scorer and emotional leader. She averaged double figures, knocked down critical threes, and most importantly, set the tone defensively. Cunningham is the kind of player who doesn't just fill a stat sheet. She fills an energy void. She's the one diving for loose balls, bumping opponents, chirping at refs, and making sure her teammates never lose focus. You can't measure that in numbers, but you see it every single night. So imagine this team without her. Suddenly Kelsey Mitchell is left carrying a massive scoring load without a secondary perimeter threat to stretch the floor. Aaliyah Boston, as great as she is, becomes easier to double-team in the paint because defenses don't have to respect Sophie lurking beyond the arc. And players like Lexi Hull and Damiris Dantas, they're good role players, but they're not Sophie. They don't bring that edge, that swagger, that ability to turn a game into a brawl Indiana can win. And defensively, this is where the drop-off becomes scary. The Fever are already one of the weaker defensive teams in the league, especially in protecting the paint. Sophie Cunningham might not be a lockdown defender, but she sets a physical tone that makes opponents uncomfortable. Without her, Indiana risks being bullied by stronger, more aggressive teams in the postseason. And let's not forget the emotional impact. This team already went through the heartbreak of losing Clark. They responded with grit and resilience, leaning on Sophie to keep them afloat. Now, if she's gone too, that could break the locker room spirit just as much as it breaks their on-court system. So when fans look at that viral smile, they're not just hoping Sophie's okay for her own sake. They're hoping it's the only thing standing between Indiana and another long off-season. This playoff push is fragile, and without Sophie Cunningham, the Fever's dream of shocking the league might vanish overnight. Sophie's sister Lindsay and her mom Paula. At WNBA, maybe you should focus less on finding players. for commenting on your poor officiating and more about hiring officials that are able to call a consistent game protect your athletes. Pathetic. Praying for you. Sophie Cunningham, yeah, officially, my two favorite players in this league. Finally, we've got to zoom out a teat because this moment isn't just about one injury. It's about legacy, reputation, and the credibility of the WNBA itself. For Sophie Cunningham, this was supposed to be her redemption season. After years of being labeled a role player in Phoenix, she came to Indiana and embraced the role of enforcer, leader, and spark plug. She wasn't Caitlin Clark, she wasn't Aaliyah Boston, but she was the heartbeat of the team. And fans started to love her for it. She leaned into her edgy, trash-talking persona and gave the Fever something they hadn't had in years: attitude. So when she went down clutching her knee, it wasn't just a physical blow. Hey, it was the potential end of her defining season, the year she was finally carving out her own star identity. That's why the viral smile mattered so much. Fans didn't just see it as hope for her recovery. They saw it as a symbol that her story isn't over. Not this year, not like this. But then there's Bria Hartley, the player who collided with Sophie, whose awkward fall triggered the entire situation, and whose smirk afterward went viral just as fast as Sophie's smile. Fair or not, Hartley now faces a reputation crisis. Fans have branded her as reckless, dirty, and insensitive. Even if she didn't mean harm, perception is reality in sports. And that viral image of her smiling after Sophie crumpled on the floor, that's going to stick with her for years. This is where the WNBA comes in. The league is already under fire for officiating inconsistencies and its failure to protect players from hard fouls, especially Caitlin Clark earlier this year. Now you've got Sophie's family blasting the league, fans outraged at Hartley, and a playoff contender potentially crippled by another injury. If the WNBA doesn't step in with transparency and accountability, their credibility takes a huge hit. And here's the kicker. This isn't just about Indiana. This is about the narrative around women's basketball at a time when it's exploding in popularity. Fans are tuning in, buying tickets, following every storyline. But if the league becomes known for injuries, dirty play, and lack of protection for stars, that growth could stall. So Sophie's smile isn't just a feel-good detail, it's a crossroads moment. It represents hope for Indiana's season, redemption for Sophie's career, and a test for how the WNBA handles controversy in its new spotlight. Whether it ends as a comeback story or a cautionary tale depends on what happens in the next few weeks.